So we're breaking from our traditional format again this week because we have another guest. And just like last show, if you're a member of the Reddit and Apple communities, this guest really needs no introduction. Today we're joined by Christian Selig, the creator of the Apollo Reddit client. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
I believe some congratulations are in order because today actually marks the 1-year anniversary of Apollo launching on the App Store. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. My girlfriend mentioned it to me the other week. I almost forgot the date, and then I clued in that it was the same night we were doing this. So, yeah, what a perfect occasion.
Yeah, it wasn't planned or anything, just a nice coincidence on our part.
Are you doing anything to commemorate the day?
Gosh, I probably should be, shouldn't I? I got this really sick...
Sounds like a note.
I got an electric pepper shaker today from Amazon, but I guess I ordered it last week, so I guess it's not really anything too planned, but... It's really awesome, though. I'm pretty stoked, so it's been a good day.
Oh, man.
Yeah, take us through the pepper shaker.
It's one of those... I was trying for the longest time to figure out how to, like, turn it on and make it work, right? And but it's, like, gravity-based, I guess, so you just tip it upside down, and it does its magic. I, like, had this crappy, just, normal first-world problems grinder for, like, years, and whenever I was making, like, craft dinner or something, I'd be, grinding it, and the bottom would completely fall out, and all the big pepper unground chunks would go, and you'd be like, oh my god, this is the worst. So I figured, enough's enough. I could spend another $10 and get one of those fancy electric ones. So yeah, that was my 1-year present to myself, and it's been worth it so far.
Call me crazy, but I love chewing on those pepper kernels, like unground.
Oh, I will call you crazy. Those are terrible.
Yeah.
I can't say I've ever tried that.
Oh my god, you must like the wasabi and everything then, because those are pretty intense.
Oh yeah, I love wasabi too.
Okay, well yeah, there you go. I can't do any of that.
So you've actually been having a little bit of trouble here recently getting the latest version of Apollo approved. Can you kind of talk us through what's going on with that?
I almost wish myself, but submitting it was one of those things where I never expected. It didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary. I just kind of like every submission I've done prior to this has been approved inside of 12 hours and off to the races kind of thing. But yeah, this time it was taking unusually long, which it has a few subscription options in it. So I figured that was probably why. But it turns out they have probably an older rule about you can't specifically charge for features iOS has built in. So like you can't charge to output to AirPlay, for instance, and you also can't charge for push notifications apparently, which makes sense on the surface until you realize that, like, for a lot of us indie developers, push notifications inherently they need to push from somewhere, and that somewhere is a server, and servers are unfortunately not cheap. So there's kind of an inherent, especially when Reddit's a big site, there's a lot of users, supporting that many users through a server. It's not really economical or feasible to do for free unless you're a big company like Reddit. So I was like, okay, I'll tack on, like, say 99 cents a month or something nominal just to help contribute to the server fees that I get. And I guess Reddit or Apple rather didn't quite see eye to eye to that. So it got my first rejection for Apollo ever, which was unfortunate. But it seems like it's all kind of working out now. The advice they gave me was basically like they understand it's just kind of a rule they have to prevent like edge case abuse from like the AirPlay situation where someone was doing something really, really scummy about it. So they said like just kind of bundle it with some other features that aren't system capability. So I talked it over with the community, and they suggested something like add some extra custom icons and add something simple like theming, and then just call it like I'm going to call it, I think, like Apollo Ultra, and notifications kind of just happen to be in that pack, and then I guess it's kind of kosher at that point, I guess. So it's some hoop jumping a little bit, which is unfortunate, but it's you got to do what you got to do, I guess.
And in working on this, you've kind of gotten a chance to speak directly with at least one member of the Apple support team, right?
Yeah, they were really great. They I want to say, probably like a few days after the rejection, I sent an appeal, and they said they chewed on it a bit, and they said like, look, we'd like to give you a call if we could to talk about it. And I said, great. Like I told you guys, this was when I was on vacation. Unfortunately, couldn't come on the show earlier. So I was like, I didn't obviously want to delay it any in case they changed their mind or it was a short-term call or something. So I said, like, look, just, give me a call whenever. I'll keep my phone handy. And, like I said in the subreddit, I was in line for a roller coaster at Busch Gardens when they called, so I hopped in a line and prayed to God the guy could hear me, and thankfully he could. I guess that's a testament to their phones' mics, but yeah, we talked it over, and he basically just said what I told you, and super nice guy. Like, I couldn't have asked for a professional, but not like a robot. Like, he was super understanding and great. So, you know, overall, like, it's one of those things where it's a rule. I guess I understand that, and I couldn't have asked for better from them, given the circumstances, I guess.
And I saw you were commissioning some outside artists to kind of work on this feature set for Apollo Ultra.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been kind of just toiling away on finishing up like the theming and stuff, which was a little more work than I thought it would be, just like making sure every color kind of works and everything. And then I was like, oh crap, I've got to do an icon or two as well. And then I kind of sat down to do it, and I was like, you know, I'm not an artist by trade. I'm barely a programmer by trade. I should probably leave this up to the professionals. So I said, yeah, you know what, like, in the interest of time and my own sanity, like, yeah, let's leave it up to a professional. So, yeah, I figured, and I kind of needed it, unfortunately, a little short term, because I like to leave things to the very last minute. And yeah, and I figured, so I posted something, like I was looking for a pixel artist, because I really like pixel art, and I've never had an Apollo icon done like that. And I figured, kind of taking the existing icon and pixel artifying it could be done reasonably quickly, and it seems like it is. A few people reached out, so hopefully we'll get some cool custom icons that aren't just me making a fool of myself in Photoshop.
So does that mean that we should be expecting at least you to be resubmitting Apollo 1.3 sometime in the near future?
Yeah, I'm hoping. Gosh, I would really like to submit it for end of day Thursday is my goal, because I'd really love to, in the perfect world, have it all approved by, say, like Friday in a perfect situation, and then I can, because I wanted to post it on Saturday in the Apple subreddit, because that's the one day of the week you can do the self-promotion Saturdays or whatever, and I kind of wanted to, just in case, because, like I said, this hopefully, for what I consider a very reasonable reason, has an optional subscription to help pay for the notification server, and I wanted to hopefully preempt any fear about Apollo turning into some, you know, Candy Crush knockoff where it's going to charge you freemium everything and everything's going to move to subscription. I would like to post a thread and just be like, hey, here are my plans. I'm not going to totally go crazy here or anything. This is just an optional thing to help pay for servers. So yeah, so I was hoping to get it done for Saturday so I could kind of talk to the community about it at large. But, you know, if it's not, I might just either wait till the next Saturday or hop on another thread someone hopefully posts.
I saw one of your calculations on how much traffic your notification server might actually be doing, and the numbers are crazy, like tens of millions of requests. Was it per hour?
Oh God, yeah, it's nuts. Like, just it was one of those things where, like, I initially just wanted to include it as part of Pro, and a few people when I posted that were like, dude, like, I work with servers, like, don't do that. Like, you're attaching like something that is you know, you're incurring monthly costs for renting the server and maintaining the server, but you're attaching it to like a very small one-time fee. Like, those two things aren't really compatible. It would be like, you know, doing a car rental for, you know, $50. It's like, that would be great if they're, you know, for a few days, but eventually someone's going to lose money, kind of thing. So it's like, okay, yeah, you guys are right. I probably should, you know, consider this. And yeah, just the idea of just completely opening the floodgates. I'd probably be spending more of my time doing like server admin stuff than actually creating the app, which is, I don't think, what anybody wants me to be doing.
So in the initial talks for 1.3, you had said you were considering at least having the subscription model available, of course, but also kind of like an early bird special for someone to pay like a one-time fee for a lifetime unlocking. Is that still something you're planning on, or have you kind of dropped that idea?
No, I definitely absolutely still want to do that. It's one of those things where it is tricky, like I said, because, you know, if I make it something like Pro is $299, like, I can't quite do it for that, because obviously, like, for 3 months I'd be great, but then, you know, not so much. Yeah. But so a few people understandably are just like completely hating subscriptions, which, you know, isn't exactly an uncommon opinion, and I totally get it. So for those people, I wanted to offer an option where, like, hopefully we can both have something work out amicably, where, you know, I'm not going to be in the red like 6 months in, but you're not going to have to potentially see that subscription every month that you know, might not be a fan of. So yeah, so the plan was It's one of those things where I was planning to do it for $20 for a lifetime, whereas it's $10 a year otherwise. So it's kind of like, it's basically, if you're getting it for more than 2 years, it pays for itself kind of thing. So it's a pretty good deal for everyone, I think. But it's also one of those things where if everybody jumps on that and I see it's a terrible deal for me, I'll honor everyone who got it previously, but I might either do away with it going into the future or raise the price or something. So pretty much the lowest price it'll ever be will be the launch price, which will be $20. Yeah.
I think that sounds fair. And I think, at least as far as the Apollo app community, you have like 100% backing on this. So I don't think you're going to have to
well, yeah,
argue
that
your
was
case
my
too
goal.
much.
I tried to say I just want to make sure I'm not being crazy here, and everyone seems to most of the stuff I've done so far actually has been what the community has suggested. So I'll try to find the people who suggested and just direct the blame their way if I get in any trouble.
So kind of going back in time here a bit, I'm just curious about how you decided on the name Apollo in the first place, because I know, like, if I start a project in Xcode, like, the very first thing it says is, what do you want to name your project? And I'll spend hours just staring at the screen saying, what do I want to name this?
Oh, my God, I hate
So how did
that.
you get to Apollo?
Not easily. It originally was called Calico for some reason I can't remember. Something probably to do with cats. But then Google had a project Calico, and I'm like, I can never compete with Google on a name. So I think I was walking in class. This was back when I was in university, and I was telling a friend about this. And he was kind of I was bouncing ideas off of him. And he said something. We were basically talking about how Apollo's, Reddit itself is kind of like space themed. They have the alien mascot and everything. And I was like, okay, so a client, it kind of helps you explore Reddit, which is kind of like a spaceship, explore space, and Reddit's kind of the space thing. So he was mentioning that, and then I forget who mentioned it, but one of us was kind of like, okay, the spaceship thing, like, what about Apollo? And I think it kind of it stuck from there. It had kind of a nice it had a nice mouthfeel, you know what I mean? Like, you say it and it sounds substantial, I guess. You know, like, I could have named a blueberry or something like that sounds a little more like, you know, it doesn't exactly sound like, oh, that must be a great app, blueberry. Like, it's, I don't know. But Apollo kind of has, yeah, I guess I have the astronauts to thank for that, but it has a nice little ring to it.
Well, that answers a question I had coming up here, was where the Calico Summer subreddit name came from.
There you go, yeah. It was, I don't know where the summer part came from. It was probably that time of the year, but yeah, it was called Calico. On one of my old iPhones, I think I still actually have it's like a super old version of the app with like this crappy little like 5-bit cat icon on it, and it's still called Calico. So yeah, it's there somewhere.
Can someone explain Calico Summer to me, just quickly?
It's just like it's a test subreddit where it literally could just be called Apollo Test, where like if I need to see like, oh, a user posted that GIFs are working terribly, I'll just like maybe post like 10 test GIFs in the subreddit, then I can kind of just navigate to that subreddit and have like a barrage of tests like instantly available to me.
Okay.
But yeah, it confuses a lot of people.
Yeah.
So talking about kind of old things and coming up with names, how did you transition from Blur to Syllable?
Oh, you've done your research. That's a good question, too. Man, I almost don't remember that one. I want to say, and I might be completely wrong in this, that near the end of my development on that app, I noticed somebody else came out with an app prior to me called Blur with the 2 R's, and they were like a bigger company, at least, kind of the way that I think I was in like my third year of university at the time. And I was kind of like, oh God, I don't want to release this and then have some company come after me. So I should just go with, and I had like 2 R's in it. So it wasn't even like the word Blur. It was probably like trademarked or something. So I was like, Syllable sounds generic enough. I can't imagine you can literally trademark a word that basic. And this will kind of hit the point home. So yeah, so I've had a rich history with naming, so I can definitely sympathize with you.
For those listening that maybe aren't familiar with Syllable, can you kind of go over what that is and maybe what happened to it?
Man, it's hilarious. I literally, I haven't heard one person mention it all year. I think this is the first I've ever talked about it. It was basically, I guess, the first iPhone app I ever made. It was, there was a website way back when that did, you could basically input a passage of text. And it would help you learn to speed read it by basically there was a few papers or research done on it or something where basically a lot of the reason people read slowly, as I understand it, is that they sub-vocalize, it's called, where you're mouthing the words as you read. And obviously that basically limits how fast you can read to basically how fast you can talk, which obviously your mind can process things a lot faster than your mouth can move, so that's not exactly optimal. So long story short, this app would flash one word at a time to you. So you set a specific pace. So you said, I want it to flash 300 words a minute. And then you basically had no time to sub-vocalize. You kind of just had to force yourself to learn the shapes of, say, the letters and everything and process that into a word. And it would hopefully teach you to sub-vocalize less and read faster. And that was all well and good, but I found it really inconvenient in that, like, you could, I guess, copy and paste, like, random like Reddit comments you liked or an article or something into this web app, but like half the time I wanted it, I'd either be on the go or I'd like see a link on Twitter I wanted to read quickly, and I didn't want to like, you know, open the website, like copy and paste it on the iPhone, you know, jump over to some web app. So I was like, oh, I should be able to streamline this with an app, like maybe 2 people will want it. And yeah, so I basically sent it over the excruciating process of learning how to do that, and it basically was just a little app where you could input a URL, it would hit some web service and basically pull out all the important text. It would get rid of all like the ads and the bylines and everything that you didn't need, and then it would just present it to you 1 word at a time or 2 words at a time if you're feeling really adventurous. And I guess. And
what language did you code that in?
That was Objective-C. Yeah, there was no Swift back then, so yeah, that would have been my first dance with Objective-C way back when.
So and Syllable isn't on the App Store anymore. Did you just decide to stop updating that?
Yeah, I actually think it made it until like a week or 2 after Apollo came out, or maybe not. I can't quite remember. But basically, it came to the point where I didn't really have the time to maintain it, and the user base was like 100 times smaller than Apollo's like test flight beta. So I was like, right. This is not really doing much. And then on the flip side, the back-end web service that did that website crawling I was talking about, they pivoted in some capacity and went after like the enterprise instead of like small indie developers. So they were like, hey, your plan that literally costs $20 a month is now going to be $400 a month. And I was like, okay, well, that'll do it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, come on. So, yeah. Maybe one day.
So when you approached the Reddit community like in early 2015 with Apollo, you had thought at that point that you're only a few months away from launching it, which ended up being a couple more years.
Yeah.
What were some of those unforeseen challenges that ended up extending that time so long?
The app mostly. I know it's literally just comes down to I'm clearly terrible at estimating. I guess it's just that old adage that, like, you know, like the last 10% takes 90% of the time. You're like, okay, I'm 90% done, but you don't realize how long that, like, little bit of polish takes. Like, that first beta of Apollo I shipped, like, it should have been called, like, I don't know if there's Greek letters before alpha, but it should have been something like that. Like, it was pretty rough. I remember literally, like, it must have been like the night before I shipped the beta. I had like literally for 2 years up until that point just hard coded in plain text my like credentials into the app, and I was like, oh shit, like I should make it so people can actually log into their accounts. So I like rigged up like this quick splash screen that was like, oh yeah, you should log in. Like probably literally like less than 24 hours before the beta went out, and yeah, it was pretty amateur hour stuff.
So, and is it still just you working on Apollo?
Yeah, still just me, myself, and I.
Do you have any intentions of potentially starting a small team if Apollo gets any bigger?
It's one of those things, like, I could probably justify maybe doing it, but, like, it just doesn't sound like any fun. Like, I kind of like just and not even, like, in a selfish way, just the streamlined process of developing it right now is super... well, it's very streamlined. Like I can, you know, just go for a coffee and kind of just think about how I want to do an idea, come back, jot some ideas down about it, maybe design it a little bit, realize I need a little breather and go work on something else for a little bit. And there's no one that I kind of have to explain that to. There's no one that I have to like really rope in and like, because I really find what a lot of the large companies seem to struggle with is almost that bureaucracy and hierarchy and going through all the multiple channels to do things. And it's just so quick to just hammer out something when it's only you. And it just makes
Right.
the whole, it still feels like very much like a hobby in a nice way when there's not like a bunch of cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. So I guess maybe deep down it is selfish, but I really enjoy working on it when it's kind of just, when it's kind of just me bouncing ideas off myself and designing things out. But at the same time, as I say that though, like I involve the subreddit to such an extent that it almost is like it's a big team in a way. So it's not completely lonesome. Like if I'm curious about an idea or I don't think something's necessarily going to work out, like I can post it and be like, do you guys think I'm crazy here? And a lot of the time they'll be like, yeah, no, that's really stupid. And I can be like, great, okay, well, you guys, that's in effect hopefully what an employee would do as well. So yeah, maybe one day, but it's something I'm pretty happy with how it's set up now, so I don't have any plans currently.
There is some old saying about like doubling the team doesn't half the time to get anything done. I can't remember what the wording is exactly, but keeping to yourself sounds like a decent idea if that's what you enjoy.
Well, exactly that. Like I feel like if I add, like, yeah, it definitely wouldn't be like a 2 times increase by having a team of 2. Like I feel like it would be like maybe like a 30% increase or something like that. And it's not even like the coding that I'd hire. Like I find like I'm just terribly indecisive. Like I'll sit on like, I think I tweeted out a few days ago, but like I was trying to design the little settings icon for the app theming, and it's almost embarrassing. I must have spent like 6 hours going back and forth on icons, which is just a terrible use of time. But it's nothing that like I couldn't really contract that out to somebody, right? Like I'd be like, okay, design an icon, and then they'd give me it, and then I'd probably hum and haw for 6 hours. Like, so it's almost like this painful, sadistic thing that I have to put myself through. Yeah, so I don't think anyone would even want to work at this at Apollo Corp.
Well, just kind of curious here. I'm going to throw a bunch of buzzwords out here, but
Good.
Working by yourself, what kind of methodology do you feel like you follow when it's just yourself and not a team? You think you kind of stick to a more old-fashioned waterfall approach, or are you still kind of growing with the industry and adopting Scrum methodologies, even with a single-person development team?
Oh, I wish I could say I assigned a acronym to what I do. It's probably a lot more.
Just make one up.
Yeah. It's probably a lot more like a lot more animalistic and disorganized. It's more so like I guess there's probably not an acronym, nor should there ever be. But it's I mostly just kind of jot down like the ideas in a document that I want to do for a specific update, and I kind of just go through them and try to hit everyone off. That sounds super unimpressive when I say it out loud, but I'll basically be like, yeah, Apollo 1.3, I want to have notifications is the big one, and then I'll kind of break that down into, okay, I need the server component that, powers it. Okay, I need the custom notifications UI, so hopefully you don't have to bounce into the app every time. Okay, I need, obviously, the registration, so it pops up and asks you to allow notifications and all that stuff, and I'll kind of make those subtasks and go through them. But as far as like, doing any daily stand-ups with one of my cats or something, this.
I just realized there might be someone who takes offense at you calling yourself a one-person team, because didn't your partner design your website?
She did. Yeah, she did. I should say that. She did a great job. She's a web designer developer by trade. So that was another situation like with the icons where I'm like, I definitely should stay in my lane and get somebody who knows what they're doing. And God, and like I swear, like a few days she cranked out just an absolutely beautiful website. So, and it even has like a night mode toggle on the top right, which I thought was nuts. Like I didn't even know you could do that. I guess that shows where I am with the web stuff. But yeah, so
she knows your audience really well.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like when somebody mentioned that, I think they were like, is that something you could even do? And I was like, no, I don't think so. But she was like, oh, what are you talking about? You totally can do that. So she went off to the races, and yeah, the website actually gets quite a bit of traffic like alongside the App Store. So there's definitely a piece of her and a lot of Apollo users.
So about 4 years ago, you had the opportunity to intern with Apple. Can you kind of tell us about that experience?
Yeah, that was really crazy. I miss it a lot in a lot of ways. So it was actually really random in a way, because I was working in Toronto at a different internship. Basically, our university made us do 3 co-op terms, so we had throughout our school years, like it worked out to mostly every summer. Instead of just going off and working at like the local movie theater, they'd be like, hey, we want you to get a job in the industry. So that one summer or winter, I was working in Toronto at a pretty cool startup. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But at the time, I was like, okay, this is my second of the three. I need one more job. I'll just throw my application into Apple into the void. So I think, I went home from work one day and applied, and then yeah, like a week later, one of the recruiters from Apple emailed me back, and they're like, hey, we'd love to interview you. And I was like, you have to be kidding me. There's no way. I was planning, like, this job's over in a week. I was planning on just going back to, I live on the other coast, so this was right in the middle of Canada in Toronto. So I was like, I was planning to fly back home. But they're like, no, like, we can do some interviews. Maybe come down. And yeah, so I, on most of my lunch breaks for that week, they'd call and we'd interview back and forth. And, I still didn't really expect I'd get it because I think they said they were still interviewing a bunch of other people. But yeah, sure enough, I was walking home one day and they called and they said they'd love to have me. And yeah, that was probably one of the defining points of my life. But yeah, and the whole experience was nuts. Like, even getting down there, like, I'm obviously not American, I'm Canadian. So I had to get the visa stuff, and I'm apparently an idiot and have no idea how visas work. So I thought it was a whole thing where, like, they basically, like, you had a computer file in some database, and they basically, like, digitally stamp it and say, okay, he's good to come in the States for, say, 4 months of summer 2014. So I got to the...
Sounds logical.
Yeah, right? Like, that's what I thought. But so I get to the airport. I think this was like a week before I was supposed to start, and I, like, bought my tickets, everything. I had, like, my hotel set up. I get to the customs or the border or whatever, and they're like, we have no idea who you are. Like, we have no idea. You have no papers. Like, what are you doing here? And I was like, it was at that moment I'm like, oh, I really messed up here. So I called the recruiter at Apple, and he was like, oh my god, oh no. So I think something was holding up my visa or something, so I basically had to go back and relax for another week. So basically I eventually got down there, and yeah, it was just a ride. It was one of those things where it was just, you're surrounded by so many people that are so much smarter than you, and it's humbling and inspiring and everything all at the same time. Like, one of the most sadistic things I think Apple does is that they don't let their employees create apps on the side, which I say that because, like, you're around all these, like, super brilliant people who do these, like, amazing things, and it's such, like, like, as far as an iOS developer goes, it's kind of like Disney World. So you have all this energy and motivation to go and build something, like, crazy when you get home from work, and the lawyers are kind of like, don't touch your computer. So it's so it was very much like, after the 4-month internship, I was just, like, exploding to work on Apollo, basically. But yeah, it was just, it was incredible. Like, my boss was thankfully cool enough that he was basically like, you just get your work done. I don't really, like, I don't have a preference where you do it. You can do it right in your office here, or you can go over to Infinite Loop. Because a lot of people don't realize that, like, Apple, like, not everybody works at, I guess it would be Apple Park now, but back then it was Infinite Loop. Not everybody works, like, right there. Like, they basically own the town. There's buildings, like, there's probably like 20 Apple buildings all over, and I was working, like, down the street, basically. So once in a while, I'd take the Apple shuttle up to Infinite Loop, and I'd sit inside, like, I think it was Infinite Loop Building 4, which was where Johnny Ive worked, and I'd just kind of sit in the hallway, and a few times a day he'd walk by, and I kind of just was like, "Ooh, that's Johnny Ive." And that was basically my day. Yeah, so... yeah, it was very cool.
Well, you have a great photo on Twitter with you with Craig.
Yeah, that was, like I said, my boss was super cool. He got us tickets to the WWDC that year, which was actually super cool because it was the year they introduced Swift. So I was literally, like, almost, like, basically right there when they introduced it. But they had, like, I forget what they call it, the bash or something. It was like an after party. And Craig was getting pictures with all, I think it was the WWDC scholars, which I don't think I realized at the time, but I looked young enough probably to pass for that. So I was like, oh, I'm totally not, like, working for you. Like, can I get a picture? Yeah, and he was great. So yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, what an incredible time to be there, not only during WWDC, but during such a big announcement as Swift. My God. And then to come away from that experience, not only being there for the introduction, but then getting a chance to work on it with Apple, and then coming back to Dalhousie University and giving a speech kind of as the authority on Swift there. Can you tell us about that speech?
Yeah, that was really cool. Gosh, I think I was in my 4th year then, because it would have been right when I got back from Apple. They were like, hey, could you do, like, a little introduction course on iOS development in Swift, because like most universities, I think they kind of realize that they do a lot of like beautiful job on doing like theory, like here's how you program in Python, here's how you program in C, Java, whatever, but they don't necessarily, you can very easily graduate having no idea how to like build a web app or like build an iPhone app, for instance. So I think they were trying to address that with some optional like little seminars you could go to. So they got me to do one, and it was super cool. Like everyone there was super interested in learning like iPhone development. Thankfully still is. It's I think people find it pretty interesting. So yeah, I got to lead like a little seminar on the basics of Swift, and I think I put together like a little to-do app, and everyone was super cool about it and learned a lot, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I can definitely see why so many of the iOS developer community seems to like going to those talking conferences and putting on shows, because yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So you mentioned briefly just a moment ago about your internship with Bionym Inc. in Toronto.
God, you're good.
Which was, like 5 years ago. But you got the chance there to work on some ECG software for the iPad. I'm curious, coming from someone with a little bit of background experience like you, what your thoughts were on the new Apple Watch.
Oh, that looked nuts. We don't get the ECG stuff in Canada, apparently. That was the only thing. But
same in Australia.
Yeah, I know. It's always something, isn't it? But I'm sure we'll get it eventually. But yeah, it looks super cool. Like it was very similar, like the startup I worked at in Toronto, Bionym, like you said. They did a very similar thing a few years back where they had a bracelet, but it was solely about doing an EKG. So you would their thing was more so where Apple's is more of a medical health based figure out if anything's wrong with you kind of perspective. They did it more so for authentication, which was pretty cool because they found that your EKG or your heart rhythm has a very similar property to like a fingerprint where it can uniquely identify you. So they made this bracelet where I unfortunately don't think it took off, but you could basically wear it and it would have this like permanent authentication as to who you are. So you could walk up to like a hotel door and it would say like, okay, your EKG, detected a minute ago, says it's still you. It's still connected to your arm. Like we'll let you in. So it was a really cool product, and it's really neat that like Apple has somehow integrated it like just as if it's like just some other like puny sensor and nothing. Like this product is so many things, and then they're just like, oh, it does your EKG as well now. So that's super cool. Like I almost wonder if that company's how they're going to respond to something like that, because I mean, giving an EKG access to like everyone who has an Apple Watch is. I just can't even. I imagine that eventually they might even do stuff beyond the health stuff, because it's a pretty powerful capability.
Yeah.
There's one benefit that EKG authentication has over like a fingerprint or like an iris reading or a face reading, is that once you're dead, no one can use it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. It was pretty cool for that, and it's kind of cooler than a fingerprint in a way too, because like. I don't know. There's something about a heart rate that, detecting all that stuff's a little cooler than just placing your finger on something. Because even more so than like Face ID, it's almost, if you have just something on your bracelet, like you don't really have to worry so much about, your face being perfectly in line with something. It's just kind of like, it's like continuously authenticating you in the background. So yeah, there's some definite, it would be really cool if Apple did something like that, where they said like, oh, we detected your EKG 5 minutes ago on your Apple Watch. It's still touching your skin. Therefore it has to be you. Therefore, your iPhone is, very close in a Bluetooth range. We're just going to keep it unlocked for you or something, but who knows the feasibility.
I'm just going to go and register the name Heart ID right now, I think, and the domain as well.
Yeah, heartid.com, yeah. You won't need to do the podcast much longer. Yeah, you'll be golden.
Okay, I kind of have a random mixed bag of questions that don't fit anywhere specific, but I wanted to ask them to you.
Sure.
You tweeted just a couple days ago that you'd spent a decent amount of time writing the most useless code of your life. Can you tell us what you were referencing there?
Yeah, so it was like, I really like that app Carrot Weather. It's that weather app that has like the really quirky personality and kind of makes weather a lot less boring. So I figured like there's a button in the Apollo theming screen where I kind of just put a button in there that doesn't really do anything. It's just kind of so you have an extra button on the screen so you can kind of see when the theme changes, if that makes any sense. Like,
Okay.
Other than that, there's just kind of the back button, and like so you don't get a great indicator that the theme is changing. So I wanted you to be able to see it at a glance, so I just threw up another useless button. And I basically just I spent quite a bit of time writing like a bunch of random dialogue, depending on how many times you interact with the button, where you can kind of have conversations with it. So yeah, it sounds pretty stupid when I say it out loud, but yeah. In my defense, I think it was late on a Friday night. There was no work being done. I was in no state to do any like actual productive code, so it's not as if anything was lost in relation to it, because I know somebody's going to be like, "Why didn't you add this feature I've been asking for months? So you did this stupid conversational thing instead." No, it's all good.
So, and while you're doing your development, do you do all this with a Colmac keyboard, or have you switched back to QWERTY by now?
Man, you were good. Yeah, I do it all on Colmac. Yeah, it's funnily enough, I guess that'll always tie me to Apple, because there was a brief period where I forgot why, but there wasn't I think I was in like the design phase of the project, so there wasn't a lot of coding I needed to be doing at the time. So it was kind of like, while I'm designing, I might as well like peck away and learn a different keyboard layout, because my wrists were really starting to bother me. So sure enough, I guess I learned Colmac on Apple's dime. And spent a few weeks, slowly learning this new keyboard layout that, for the uninitiated, it's kind of like that Dvorak keyboard layout, but a little tweaked, where it's a little more ergonomic than QWERTY. So for those of us who type for, an unhealthy amount of hours a day, I found it just helps my wrists a little bit more.
Do you change your keycaps around, or do you just touch type on regular keyboard, or do you have another keyboard?
I don't change. I went to change them on my old MacBook keyboard, but it drove me crazy because the little finger, I don't know what the term is, the little finger nib things on the F and the J key, they'd be, God knows where. So I could never figure out where to put my fingers for the home row placement kind of thing, which I found was way more important. I guess I could have probably rigged something up, but I figured I'm not really one of those people who look down at the keyboard anyway. So it never really bothered me. And on these new MacBook keyboards, I don't think I'd ever want to touch it. Like taking those keys off, I'd probably, they seem complicated enough that I'd probably never get them back on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think nubs is the correct technical term.
Good. Okay, good. It sounded a little too technical in my mouth, but I'm glad it came across.
So, looking farther ahead, assuming we get 1.3 out into the community within the next week or so, what's in the cards for Apollo's future?
Thinking 1.4.
Oh, logical.
Yeah.
Don't go too crazy.
Yeah, no. I was gonna skip right to 1.5, but yeah, the whole one at a time things kept me well. But no, I guess my plans for the short term to medium term future are there's kind of a laundry list of little features that I know I can probably bang out in a few hours that people have just been clamoring for from the beginning, like little things like having subreddit specific sorting. So say in the Zelda subreddit, you really want to see everything by new, but in Ask Reddit, you want to see everything by top. Having something that remembers that, which, very easy to do on paper. I just really haven't had the time to do it. So I'd love to just have a bunch of little incremental releases, 1.4 has that and a few other highly requested things. 1.5 has that and a few others. And just kind of get through all those, as well as some of the more annoying bug fixes. There's been some text stretching issues. So basically just hanker where notifications has been so much bigger than I ever wanted it to be. I'd love to just work on some smaller things in comparison. And at the same time, while I'm doing all of those, we're also working on something big in the background where I'm hopefully working on the iPad app. Because I don't really want to do another notifications thing where I kind of just disappear for 2 or 3 months working on this one thing and everyone's like, where are the updates? So hopefully work on those things in tandem where I'm able to keep fueling the fire with some more smaller updates that people have really wanted, while at the same time plugging away at this bigger thing that'll hopefully not take up all of my time as a result.
The state of the iPad app was going to be my next question, because originally it was kind of an iPad app by mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A missed checkbox.
Yeah. So, there was at one point where I switched Apollo away from the whole storyboards and frame-based code to this cool layouting project by Facebook and Pinterest called Texture. And so basically I ended up like rewriting like massive parts of the app to do that. And so I ended up just creating a new project in Xcode completely just to test it out and kind of build onto it. And then that ended up I just slowly brought everything back into it. But the end result was when I created that new Xcode project, all the defaults were still checked. So things like, oh, it's a universal app was still checked. So I went and like, gosh, probably like a month or two before I was ready to ship it, I was like, oh my God, there's an iPad version enabled that people have been using. And a few people were like, hey, don't take that from me. And it's nowhere, like, to be completely frank, like, I don't think it's like, it works as an iPad app. And unfortunately, like with the state of iPad apps, a lot of them, like even like the Twitter iPad app, like a lot of them don't take very good, use of the screen real estate. So it's not exactly like it's like this embarrassment of the platform, but it's definitely not what I think it could be. And if people hadn't really handed me to just keep it in there because it's better than stretching it out, I probably would have taken it out. But I really want to do something that people look at and say like, wow, that takes good advantage of what an iPad can be, and not just kind of like phoned in like the current version is. Which I'll be the first to say.
I guess it's tricky when there's already, like, the website Reddit already works fairly well on the iPad just by itself. So
yeah, exactly, and it's like, and in other ways, like it almost works better than a lot of apps because like the iPad like browser does really great tab integration, so you can open a new tab with an Ask Reddit thread and then a different thread and some other subreddit, and you can keep everything really organized, kind of like the desktop Reddit. So you've got to compete with that as well. So it's definitely not as lacking as like the iPhone experience was when I came in, but it's definitely one where I think with some sprinkling some native code magic on that, there should be quite a few opportunities to make it a lot better though.
So I know you've been asked this in the past, but I feel like I have to ask now. It's been probably about a year. How do you feel about the official Reddit app?
I think in a lot of ways it's really well done, and they do a lot of stuff that I'm like, that are uniquely impressive. It's just for me personally, it's not my preferred kind of app. Like I recognize that there's like a ton, like I don't really want to disparage it because there's like, I recognize that there's a ton of great people working on it, and like genuinely there's some amazing touches on it, but it's just one of those things where for me, I really like something that feels really at home on iOS. Like the team I worked on at Apple that one summer, that was kind of there, like they were almost evangelists for that. So they'd go to different companies and kind of talk about the benefits of doing native code versus, PhoneGap or any of those kind of write once, spit it out everywhere UIs. And like the app does a lot of great things, the official app, but it just irks me a little too much that the Android and the iPhone apps are so similar, and presumably if there was like a Windows Phone app, it would be similar as well. I just kind of more so appreciate when you go to a platform and you kind of take advantage of everything that platform has. So if I, for instance, was to take Apollo and Xcode had a magic button that said, export to Android, I think it would make an objectively terrible Android app because it doesn't adopt material design. It doesn't take any of the UI conventions or platform conventions into mind. It's an iOS app. And I just think that a lot of companies, I don't know if it's financial or just simplicity wise, they really get lulled into this idea of like, oh my gosh, we can just have one app and users are going to love it. As if like users have like an Android phone, an iPhone, an iPad, and a Samsung tablet, and they're just switching between them and they need consistent experiences. Like I think most people appreciate having it adopt like the platform they're using well. And that was just kind of more so my focus with Apollo. Because I honestly, I don't get a lot of the time why companies take that strategy, because even like apps like Instagram, for instance, I think they do a great job of really feeling at home on iOS. Like it doesn't feel like kind of like a middle ground application. It feels great on iOS, great on Android. Like they do a great, even like the Facebook Messenger app, like it doesn't feel like some kind of janky app. But just in some ways, the Reddit app, just some of the design choices they make, they're very clearly not iOS inspired. They're kind of like, there's definitely some Android cues there that I don't know if it's having worked at Apple or what, but it irks me a little too much to use on a daily basis. But at the same time, like I can unequivocally say like it's a well done app. Like the scrolling performance in a lot of areas is great. Like there's a ton of functionality. Like they clearly have some good eyes on it. I just think we have very different design goals with our different projects.
Yeah, I think you definitely have a fan base that appreciates exactly what you're saying. The very native feel of Apollo, it definitely comes through.
Yeah, and that's always kind of been like my favorite thing about an iPhone app. Like I remember back when like Tweety was out for Twitter that Lauren Brichter did, like it was so cool just to be able to be like, oh, I've never used this app, but I can pick it up and inside of like 2 minutes basically know everything there is to know about it. Like not in that it's shallow, but in that like nothing is like, oh God, does this tapping this button do, like, can I swipe this? Do I tap this? Do I, like, what do I do here? Like everything's so alien. Like I'd really love for if someone's, parent is comfortable with iOS, that they should be able to pick up my app and hopefully understand it within a few minutes. And I just find like I don't know if a lot of other apps necessarily prioritize that to the same extent.
Okay. Well, Christian, before we let you go, we thought we'd have you kind of participate in what we usually do on that show, and that would be take a look at some of the top posts on the Apple subreddit and discuss them. With this case, of course, we're coming so close to the Apple keynote coming up. This isn't necessarily the top post, but it's up there. Ming-Chi Kuo is predicting we're going to see a new iPad mini. There's also talks of refreshed MacBook Air, potentially, and even the possibility of seeing AirPower. What do you think of what we could potentially see at this next keynote?
Gosh, are you guys iPad mini people? I've always been more of the full-sized iPad kind of
guy. I have one for my kids, but that's it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, especially with where, like, the 10s Max, that's like a 6.5 inch screen, isn't it? Like we're under 2 inches away from presumably it's the same size iPad mini, but like we're within a stone's throw of that just in the phones now. Like, I don't know, like I can't say the iPad mini interests me much, but I recently started like forcing myself to use the Apple Pencil and doing all the digital stuff instead of in a sketchbook, just for like planning out Apollo stuff. And I'm like, man, I would love like a bezel-less, the big iPad 12.9 inch Pro. Like if they do something there, that would be what I'd be more interested over a mini.
Well, I think that's all but confirmed, so I think that's good luck for you.
Yeah, fingers crossed here. But yeah, as far as the AirPower stuff goes, that's pretty interesting too. I'd be impressed if they do more stuff with that, because it seems like that's giving them a lot of trouble. But I'm just curious because it's decently pricey, isn't it?
We're expecting about $150 for it.
Okay. See, I have this rinky dink like $10 Qi charger mat for my iPhone that like pretty much does me fine, to be honest. Like I think it's the slower charging, but like I throw it on my nightstand overnight and it's charged when I wake up. So like if there was a 10 times faster one, it still wouldn't matter any to me. And then like at the same time, my Apple Watch has that what is it called, the Milanese stainless steel thing. Like how does that work where the band doesn't unclasp? Like, how would you set that down on the mat?
The Milanese loop does, I'm pretty sure, unfold. Maybe
I just don't do it that
the
way.
link bracelet or something like that.
The Milanese loop gets caught. It won't come all the way undone.
Yeah, I don't
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've never undone it, at least. I kind of just loosen it on my wrist and take it on and off. But when I put it on, I have one of those, like, little ones that you slot the Apple charger into, and it kind of just sits on it. So yeah, the bracelet's always dangling behind. So I'm trying to think if I'd like have half the AirPower hanging off the table and kind of shimmy it on or what. But maybe I'm just doing it wrong.
I imagine you would have to like unlatch one of the what do you call them, the tugs or the plugs?
Yeah.
Where it attaches to the watch. Do it that way instead. Although that's a little bit of a hassle.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very Apple-y.
Little buttons to press, are they? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so maybe I'm not the target audience, But yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like a lot of people are hankering for it. And like, honest goodness, like the wireless charging is one of those things that like I never thought I'd care that much about. But man, it's pretty nice. Like I was so lazy before where if I had to plug my iPhone in at night, like I was going to bed. Like I wasn't worrying about charging my phone. I'd wake up the next day, it'd be at like 15% and I'd be not having a good day. But now it's like, I always set it on my nightstand anyway. I just have to aim a little better now.
The Qi charging pads that I seem to get, like there are all these $10 ones out of China, they just have terrible charging capabilities through like a leather case or any sort of case, really. It seems that for every fraction of a millimeter, you lose like 10% of the charging speed, to the point where like the official Apple case puts me at like a 12-hour charging cycle, which is just...
Oh my God, yeah, that
ridiculous.
won't work at all.
Maybe it's just my fault buying these $10 Qi chargers instead of splashing out and getting decent one.
Man, mine, I swear mine wasn't any more than like $15. It was, yeah, it's some no name. It must be a Chinese one, but it's I guess I don't have that thick a case. It's not even an Apple one. I'm not even that big a fan of the Apple cases. Like, they look great, but I had the silicone one on my 6S for the longest time, and I just hated how it felt coming in and out of my pocket. Like, it gripped onto everything.
Those
and then
are
the
horrible,
leather
yeah.
one. Yeah. So it was like half my stuff in my pocket would come out with it. And then the leather one, I'm just not the biggest fan of how they age. Like, I kind of like it's a cool look, but for me, like, I kind of like I find the sleekness of like a technology product and the aging of like a dead cow kind of like at odds with each other. But I got this like $10 one on Amazon, and it's been great. It's pretty narrow though. I'm not overly clumsy with my iPhone, so like my girlfriend has one of those like OtterBox monstrosities on it that you could kick it off your balcony and it'd be fine.
Oh,
but
God.
Yeah, exactly.
How could you continue this relationship?
Oh, well, because I gave her an old iPhone before without a case, and yeah, we ended up having to get the screen fixed a few times. So it's really one or the other.
And the last thing from Minchi Kuo was that we might have AirPods coming out either late this year or early next year,
right.
Maybe with Hey Siri, and we briefly mentioned this beforehand. But what else could they bring to the AirPods? Maybe AirPods Pro with noise cancellation and
like the Bose stuff, right? Yeah, that could be something. I'm one of those like late adopters that I still haven't, like, I barely, like 99.9, I guess because I work at home, 99.9% of my headphone usage is like just plugged into my computer, non-Bluetooth, like a nice pair of like open back headphones that I like to listen to. Like half the time, like, I just leave the iPhone ones in the packaging when I get it because I like never listen to music on the go. So I've never picked one up, but they with the praise they get, I'm sure they'll knock it out of the park with a second generation. The only thing I always hear is that people they wish they had more controls, like, because you can only like tap it, you can't like slide on them or anything, can you?
No, just a double tap.
Yeah, it's only tap.
Right. So how do you like increase the volume then? Like, if you wanted to
Use your Apple Watch.
Right. Okay. So yeah, it's a whole ecosystem thing then. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it totally is.
Yeah, and see, like, and when you really walk down the street and like yell "Hey Siri" into the void, like, I don't know if I'd be comfortable doing that.
See, I said the same thing, but James is totally comfortable with that.
See, he must carry himself with some swagger I don't have, because I don't know about yelling that in a supermarket. I feel like you'd have to follow it up really quickly with a command or something, because you'd be getting some people looking at you.
Well, I'm not yelling it too loud to start with, so hopefully.
Well, I mean, whispering it might even be worse, though. You're just standing in the lineup and you're whispering things into the... Yeah, I don't know. You got to be careful.
All right. Well, Christian, thank you for joining us today. It's been a great show.
Yeah, no. Hopefully you guys can have me back when James gets the new AirPods in and we can hear how he does with them.
Definitely. We'd love to hear from you sometime in the future about how Apollo's coming and any future projects you're working on.
Oh, gosh, absolutely. No, this has been a joy, guys. Please have me on again.
Well, I'm Jellywoot on Reddit and Twitter.
I'm James VDM on Reddit and Twitter.
And I am that is on Reddit, and Christian Selig on Twitter.